Welcome everybody to part 2. Here we are. More grinding and welding. Oh jeez. Alright. I hope you weren't too bored with the last one. But what we're going to do is we're going to do the engine mounts, suspension, transmission, all the mounts heading backwards. That's it. You know, and I'm going to be bracing them to each other, and I'm going to tell you the reason why. So first thing is what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get my mask on, my grinder, and let's start cleaning everything up and get the welder going and weld in the mount first, because we don't want any mount to move before we start taking material off. We need to get all the mounts secured. They're not going to go anywhere, and then we can start trimming off the interior, trimming off the excess metal and putting in the braces. So it's all said and done. So, and it's, well, we got to start somewhere, so we're going to start at the front and head backwards. So let me get my mask and grinder and let's get on to it. Okay, next problem, or not a problem, is what I'm going to do. So right now we have these two mounts for the control arm. We have this mount which is stabilized for the engine mount. I also want to support this side. I want to give it a little bit more rigidity, and I want to give this more rigidity. How are we going to do it? I'm going to make a triangle like this. So if I can do it like this, keep it like, you know, keep the plate like that, so when the engine goes up, it's going to use the plate as a guide to go into the mount. It just makes it a little bit easier to guide everything in. And if I can take care of stabilizing this, 1, stabilizing this, 2, and making an engine guide, 3, you know, I mean, it basically makes it all the time and effort worth it. So let me go over and make this. I'm just going to cut this out and make just a small template. I'm going to show you what I'm going to use. This is what we're going to be using. You remember we took the engine mounts from the control arm to put on the engine? Well, we're going to use the rest of the control arm. Because what I want, see, this is really thick steel, you know? And that's kind of what I want to put on for a mount. And it's really tough. And it's been work hardened from lots of rocks being thrown against it when I was beating on it out in the back 40. Other than that, let me I got the template. What I'm pretty much going to do is go right here. This is just rough, and what I'm going to do is just bring it around over and just cut it up, and you know, we got an absolute ridge right here. It's already been banged over and we're all set. Walter, right here would be the best bracing point. Looks like we got 6 inches, and I don't have 6 inches in full length on that control arm in one straight shot. But what I do have, I just grabbed this. This is the old Jetta control arm that we've used other bits and pieces of for the chassis. And what do we have right here? From here to here, we have 6.5 inches. So and we have the bend that I want, just so it makes it strong. So I'm going to cut right here, cut right there, and or just cut right along here, down, over, and just, you know, take out what I don't need. We are at the point of doing the rear transmission mount. The rear transmission mount, as you can see, it's just a combobulated mess. I just tacked it in. You know, this is what you're going to have to do. Tack it in, pull everything out, okay, then make it like this. What I have to do first is I am going to stabilize this mount, completely weld it onto the chassis along with these ears so nothing moves. See down here, you know, this thing is just tacked in. Before I cut this and basically, you know, trim the thing up, and make a mount, you know, make a gusset down here, I have to stabilize everything else because I don't want this to move. That's a big thing. Now, after this mount is fully stabilized onto the chassis, I want to make a gusset from here, this is the control arm mount, to the chassis, and I also want to integrate it into the transmission mount. This is kind of what I made, just a quick template. It's going to go just like this. What this does, it does three things. First thing, it stabilizes or gives a little bit of extra stability to this mount on the control arm. Second, it gives a little bit of extra stability to the transmission mount. Third, it makes a gusset from the front leg to the chassis, so it makes it stiffer. Is it something that I really need? I do not know, but I figured if it does three things, I'm going to add it. You know, you can lambaste me in the comments if you want, but you know what? Why not? Let's just give it a shot. Okay, let me, I'm going to go grab some stuff. I pulled some stuff out of the scrap brain. This is the old mount from the, what I cut off for the differential. Just bits and pieces that I'm going to put in here and just weld in. And let's get that done first before we do the gusset. Here we have the mounts. They are now stable. You know, the welds aren't the greatest, but you know, hey, what can you get? What it is now I have to make the gusset. And here is the template that I made. It was going to go right here. What I was going to use was the bottom half of the drafting table. We've used plenty of metals, really thick. You know, not bad metal. But when I was walking over there, I took a look at something. I think it might be cool. Take a look at this. This is the control arm from the Jetta. We have to cut out this opposite section to put on this side to match this, you know, and once I take this out, take a look. This thing might be one hell of a cool gusset. I just have to trim it, and if I can trim it to fit here, that way this thing goes in, it'll fit on the other side of the mount. I can just, you know, hog this out a little bit. I think it might look wicked cool. You know, humor me. Let me just give this a shot. Let's just see. I put a new wheel on my cutter. Let me get my gloves and glasses on and get this back on so I don't read all the stuff, and we'll give it a shot. doesn't look half bad. I think it looks kind of neat, actually. Yeah, let's flip this thing over. And I'm going to do the other side. I'm not going to talk anymore because it's going to be basically the same thing, except for this mount probably is not going to be on there. It's a little bit different, so it's going to be probably more shallow. Don't know. I don't know. So, but I'm pretty happy about it. It looks pretty good. Almost looks like it's supposed to be there. Oh, I got an awful lot of grinding ahead of me. Woo! About all the plating is in on the internal supports for this. Let's move to the bearing for the drive shaft and head backwards. We're now in the middle of the car, heading to the back. What we have here, these are the mounts for the transmission center bearing. What here, as you can see, this outlay or outcropping of metal, same thing here. When I cut that out, that was a internal chassis support, it looked like, you know, for the original transmission tunnel. Seeing how we have a drive shaft in there, we can't have that big mount, so I gotta replicate some type of stiffness inside there, you know, just in case. I have no idea why they had it in there, but I'm gonna put it back in, and I'm gonna take these, clean them up, and mount them right to this. But we have to make sure we're gonna clear the bearing ears also. And same thing down here. I'll put metal right there. What I'm going to use for this is part of the drafting table, you know, when I put it over. And what I'm going to use for the internal mount is, this was the support for the rear quarter. Came out of the back of the donor of this car. That's pretty much that. I mean, as you can see, the e-brake handle housing, it's all rusty and shitty. You know, I got to keep it in there. This is just for measurements, and when I put all the e-brake cables and everything back in, when I put the brakes on and all that, that's when I'm going to figure out what I'm going to do. Because I might even just ditch this entire thing and just weld a different plate on there and use a different handle and system. I don't know. But let's first grab the heat gun, clean this up, then I'll grab the flap wheel, clean that up, put my mask back on, and then we'll weld this stuff up. Not that bad. Let's move to trimming out the mounts. We're now at the back of the car. here we got, this is the front differential mount. That's the rear differential mount, and we have the control arm mounts right here. This front differential mount is more than adequate for its intended job, holding the front of the differential and holding the back of the rear drive shaft. It's more than adequate. What I want to do is add something to it by adding very little weight. What I want to do is I want to connect this to these, to the rear portions of the frame that I made for the back of the car. What happens is I wanted to make it, my justification is making it just like a strut tie bar. It's, you know, when you put a tie bar in between two strut tops, it kind of reduces the flex. That's what I'm kind of going for. It'll add a little bit of stiffness to this, and you know, I'm just going to give it a shot. I think it's going to be okay if I do it that way. Just have to make sure I can get the wrench in there. And what I'm going to use is this. It's the control arm. This is the extension that I built out for the Audi Rally to put the A4 drive shafts on it just to move it around before I figured out to do all this. I'm just going to cut this up and reuse the metal, and let's see what happens. I mean, it could look like shit, but could not, you know. I don't know. Let's give it a shot. What we got here is not a screw up, but I should have thought of this before. Now that this mount is on there, I have not welded it here, but I welded it right here. What I should not have welded it right there because I have to cut this off. What it is that I'm going to cut this slit right here, score this, and flip this over. That gives me much more of a larger surface area to weld onto this bar. I just think it'll, and plus it'll look better because it'll look like it's in a straight line. Oh well, hey. Let me just say, justified by, if I cut this small piece off, I am saving a micro ounce. F1. There we go. All right. All right. Let me get my cutter and my glasses and gloves back on, and let me do that. That looks a lot better. I'm going to roll this over and do this side and continue. And as you can see, my Lincoln helmet broke. right when I was just about to come over here and weld it. It wouldn't, it flashed me. So, all right, well, let me roll this thing over, do that side, then we can get to these now. looks like this is all done, that side. I'm not going to do the rest of the plates down here because I'm trying to think of something different. But let's move on to the side suspension so we can get this thing buttoned up, and I'll show you what I'm going to do there. We're here at the back of the car. This is the subframe that I cut and expanded out. You know, just so it all maintained the same geometry as stock, just pushing it out a little bit. That's it. And when you do this, you know, I built these plates figuring, oh, it's going to be okay, you know. And if you look at it, when you have the differential in here, the shafts, the suspension, you can't really see, you know, the big picture. That's the reason why I really like it on the rotisserie. I can see the big picture a lot clearer, you know. And what it is when I cut this, if you take a look inside here, this control arm mount, there's air right there. And so this, the only way it's supporting this mount is through the sides. So this, to me, is a lot of wasted metal. You know, I will be cutting it out, but I can't cut out the backside because everything is welded on the backside so it maintains exact position, and that's what I need it to be. I need it to maintain this position. So we're going to start at the front of it. We're going to cut away all this stuff so we can bring it down to plate it in here and plate this entire mount onto this chassis rail. If you take a look at this right here, if you go a straight line, it goes right down to the edge. So we'll just continue this edge all the way down. That's kind of the deal. And I want to get rid of this subframe mount and make everything a little bit cleaner all the way in. But we got to keep this back stationary before we do any, before we do anything. We have to make sure everything is cut and welded and cleaned up to this chassis. Then we can cut this back off and bring it to the other side of the chassis. This, the cross member, if you want to call it that. It's, we have to maintain stability in this, because stability, if you don't have stability in your control arm mounts, who cares what kind of suspension you have? Who cares if you have strut tower mounts? Who cares about any of that? Because if this thing's flexing around, all that stuff is thrown out the window. It's sort of like in jiu-jitsu. In jiu-jitsu, you have to have a good base. That is the fundamentals of jiu-jitsu, is a good base. And then you move on from there. Same thing here. We're going to start with a good base, strong, plate it all into the chassis to make sure this thing does not go anywhere. I'll try and keep it as light as I can, but I'm not going to compromise any type of stiffness or chassis rigidity for lightness, using, really thin metal. I probably want to use thicker metal than thinner metal. So let me get on to doing the front part here. Let's chop out this mount, chop this off, clean this up, and start plating it to here so this won't move. And then we're going to start slowly going around it. I'll probably go from the back here to here first, just so we can expose this mounting point for the subframe down the line. That's another thing, but we'll try and trim up all this, support it, and this will probably be the last side right here. Then we'll get onto this mount, and I'll show you what I'm going to do here. Different kind of forces, but same thing, But let me go get the grinder, and we'll work on this. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just going to start slicing away bit by bit just to see what I got, and see what I can put down here and make work. And I'll have to go to the junk pile and see what I got. All right, let me get my glasses, goggles, and paraphernalia, and let's do it up. Now, you can see better now. Now that I chopped everything away, you can see a better indication of what's going on here. Here is the top of the subframe, or bottom of the subframe, whichever one you want to call it. And this is the shell that the control arm sits in. All this space. So what I'm going to do is by this has to be locked to here. And then we're going to have to go here to lock to there, I kind of want to make, full bridges with a mount goes up to here and a mount goes up to here, triangulates this portion of it. Then we're going to go over here and triangulate it down to the center of the chassis. It's more difficult to cut out than I thought. What I'm going to do with what I'm going to use for metal, pretty much I'm just going to scavenge more metal from the Sierra control arm, or from the Merkur rear control arm, because the metal is thicker than what's on there and it's really stiff. What I'm going to use, I'm going to use this piece right here. I'm just going to chop out a big chunk of it, and let me see if it'll fit. It'll work on that, where I can just use it or utilize to build it up. You know, I don't really know what's going to happen with it, but let's give it a shot. I mean, what's the worst that happens? It just takes a little bit of time. So I'm going to get this mount off, and then I'm going to cut this right out, this section right out, and let's see how close it matches up. We have now this piece of steel that I just wrapped out of that thing. If you take a look, this thing pretty much, I like the width of where this is for structural stability. If you put the mount like right there, that way it actually looks like it's curved inside there. And the only problem is this, when this mount goes upwards, this right here trails off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a groove right here, slice this so I can bring it up and try and mate it down. Whether or not, and try and go as far up as possible. Second thing is, once this thing is all squared away, I'm probably going to put a plate on one side, don't know which it is, to stabilize the mount, then cut this half, this back off right here where it goes on top of the original subframe mount, and take this stuff off and plate it right to the chassis. That way this thing is absolutely secure, and the front part is secure. Then I can start taking this off and boxing this all in and making it look kind of cool. At least that's what my plan is. Let me go cut this and try and bang it up on the anvil, and we'll make this thing work. You know, that gives me plenty of metal to weld to. It's not that bad. This has to be a little bit tailored up, and this has to be pushed back a little bit, but it's not bad at all. Let me clean this up. I'm going to weld it to it, and I'm going to take this on the anvil, just tap this down a little bit just to flatten her out, just to more match this corner. But on this side, it looks like it's going to go straight up inside here. I just have to make another small little plate. I'll do something and then trim it all down. Yeah, I think that'll work. Let's see what happens. Well, I like this. I think I'm going to make a small support in the back. Or actually, let's do this. Let's cut this out. So we have 1, 2 points here, 3 points over here. We'll get rid of this point, build it on, then get rid of this point, and then build that back up. And that'll be the entire section right there. So let me grab this. I'm going to cut this out right to here, halfway in between. This should not move. Seeing how it's like a tripod almost, a little bit lopsided, granted, but a little bit, you know, it's a tripod anyway. But let me cut this, and get out all this junk metal right here, and then we can start mating it to this part of the chassis. Well, I got a screw up right now, but looking at it, I think you might make something interesting out of the screw up. Here, take a look at this. Take a look here, my screw up. This side's fairly close, you know, because you can build weld and it'll be fine. This thing, kind of a gap of a Grand Canyon right there. But I was looking at it going, well, I don't want to remake the piece. And I can fill this in and with weld and it would be all right. But I'm also a little short up here. What I'm looking at is the angle of this mount to right here. This is exactly where I want the plate to be. So if I put a plate from here to here and just keep it square against this, that supports this entire mount right here, just a square piece of plate. Then I'll triangle gusset down inside at an angle so I can easily weld it and it'll support it, sort of like a cantilever. And then we'll get on to the rest. You know, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to grind this down a little bit more to get this closer, weld this in here, not here, cut this, get this all off, then cut this straight up so I can put a plate right in the back. I think that's going to be the easiest and probably the best solution. At least I think it is at this point. So let me get on to cleaning up this metal to weld it and to grind a little bit more to get this thing down, and we'll be all set. We'll start working on the back and the sides. All right, let's trim this up. I don't think that's going anywhere. Here we have the original mount from the subframe. As you can see, all they did was basically weld a washer. You know, it's not circular, but it's just a piece of metal that acts like a washer onto it to give it more support so it doesn't pull out. What we're gonna do, we have to make this contour right here to come over to here and bring this out. So it's pretty much, we might have to make two triangular pieces that go down in here to support it, but all the weight from here be pushed down onto this. Almost like a cantilever type, you know, like we see on a set of trailer leaf springs, like this. But we want it, you know, it'll come out from the mount here, or it'll come out from the mount here. That's where it'll end up. And there'll probably be two triangle pieces, right, like this, to go, you know, down here, up and over, up and over. So it transfers all weight onto these two pieces right here. So if it transfers onto this metal, yeah, whatever, it's not bad, but transferring onto this point right here and onto these two pieces of pretty much structural subframe or structural chassis frame, it's kind of be much better. So I'm going to blow this out, and I'm going to first make a piece here to see how far it'll, see if I can get a piece that I can make it work all the way out here. What I think I'm going to use, where is it? It's the old piece that I took out of here. I'm probably just going to try and grind it down to see how far I can get out and see if I can make it work instead of cutting out another piece. That's pretty much where it is. I got to make this piece over here to bring it down to where this bottom piece is. Have just a piece of square, you know, just a square basically, or a rectangle right here of metal. Then I'm going to take two pie cuts to go from here to there and to fill in the other side. That should make it more than strong enough. Let me go get some metal to do that. Let me go find something, and we'll get all this undercoating out of here and put it right there. Well, here's what I found out of the scrap bin pile. Remember I used a bunch of stuff in the old drafting table? This is what same thing. And what I did in order to find what metal I was going to choose to use, well, I went, this is the subframe. This is where that seat thing was welded onto, and this is where I cut it all off. And what I wanted to find is basically, you know, how thick this is. So I went down there and I played around with this. It can 18 gauge and 16. Oh, if you really forced it, you might be able to fit it. 14 gauge is a little loose, which is, you know, what does it say, 0.0747 inches. Then I went and found this, and I looked around and said, okay, 16 gauge doesn't work, 14 gauge, maybe a little bit loose, but it's a lot tighter than that, so this is actually thicker than that. That's what we're going to use. Now, what I did is I'm attempting another set of cardboard aided design here, where I'm just going to put all this stuff on there, draw it out, cut it out with a wheel, and let's see if we can put it in. I'm trying to put them as close together as possible, but still leave probably, you know, whatever the blade size in between it, so I can just make one cut. And it's actually, I'm making these all a little bit bigger, at least, you know, maybe 1/8 of an inch bigger. Doesn't look that bad. I think it's going to be strong. I think it's going to be really strong, you know, and I think I saved a little bit of weight at the time. So let's get right on to cutting up this thing, and let's try and figure out what I'm going to do over there. Because I mean, the other side's going to be fine because I know what I'm doing, but I don't know what I'm doing over here. So let's start it. We're now here at the back of the car. Now we have two things to consider. We have the first thing is to consider is the control arm mount. As you can see, I already welded on a plate on here. This is an 1/8 inch onto a 14 gauge subframe. There we go. That's if they felt it was strong enough to control a control arm. I think the stuff that we're going to put in is going to be more than adequate. Second thing we have to consider is this is the tie rod mount. We have to make sure that there's no flex and it's completely tied into the chassis. And also, as you can see this angle right here, well, I'm going to take my grinder and we're going to try and make it equal and just make that and just go down with this angle and cut around here just to get us some room, and then we're going to build off the frame rail onto this mount and start stabilizing it that way, just like we did in the other. So let me go grip my my goggles and stuff and grinder, and let's just start cutting up. Yeah, looks like I probably want something 4 inches by 7 inches at least. Yeah, let's try that. Alright, let me go try and find something. We now have that front plate on there. I've been agonizing about where the next cut is going to be. Well, I'm going to cut this side. Mindset. Well, we have a leading edge and a following edge, or a leader and a follower. This right here, it's going to be a follower. This leads because this leads our determination of how we're going to plate everything. We need to support this and this side more. I mean, these are... This and this is the same criticality. This is very, very critical. So I need to plate this onto here. So what do I need to do? I'm going to make step cuts. Just I'm going to leave this little ridge right down here. I'm going to cut straight up like this. So this thing will be maintained in the back. I'm not going to cut this mount out yet, but what I need to do is trim this out, pull this out, see what I got, and then keep going down and start building plates off of that. You know, from here down to here, you know, and it all depends on, you know, which way I'm going to do it. I don't know until I get in here. That's the thing, and you won't know until you get in there, depending on the mounting system that you want to use. This is just something I've made my bed, and I'm gonna I'm gonna do it. I got the grinder right there. Let me get my glasses and put the mask back on because the stuff smells like crap, and I'll just start slicing this stuff up and seeing what I got, you know. And I have no idea what I'm gonna build, but figured I gotta have something. All right, let me just catch this on. Zip this out. All right, well, I have impact of what I want to do, where I want to go. I think I'm going to cut the back off right here. Cut this off, cut this back off to give me more room so I can look inside what's going on. I'll cut this straight over to here, or I'll cut this down in an arc and maybe bring something down here. I don't really know yet. But what I want to do is just get this stuff off right here. You know, I'm not gonna close up this hole because I'm not sure what's gonna happen with this. This is the hole for the subframe. I kind of want it to be open, but I'm not really sure how I'm gonna do it. Don't know. But first thing, let's cut this off and we'll start the work. Well, it's all cut off. It's kind of a bitch. Just the saying. But it's, you know, it's not going anywhere. What we have to do now is figure out, we need to gap this right here is what we need to do, because it's not so much just control, you know, for the controller mount, it's for the tie rod mount also. I'm sitting there trying to figure out what can I use to bridge and not be too heavy, you know, and but still has to be absolutely strong. And I'm looking around, going, all right, how about this? These are the two-wheel drive control arms that were from the Coupe GTs and stuff like that. I'm looking at it going, I'm never going to use a two-wheel drive control arm. It's just not going to happen. And I'm sitting there going, well, look, it'll bridge in between the two. When I shorten everything up, it'll drop it down, so it'll be roughly to where this pipe is. This, I can cut the height so it supports the back of the control arm mount, and I can notch this in to control the back of the tie rod mount. I don't know if this is going to work, but let's give it a shot, you know? I told there'd be more talking in this one. Well, looks like we're going to have to cut all this stuff out in order to see what this thing needs to do to fit, but yep, well, let's just do it. Let's just cut this stuff off. We got a line right here. We'll just cut this bar out and make it all fit. Here's the control arm inside. As you can see, this ridge right here, I want it landing on both of these rails. That's my goal. Now this is going to be an extremely stiff unit. I'm not going to have to box in the bottom. I am going to box in this over here, and I'm going to box in this over here with a plate. After this is all welded, I can take the grinder, grind things down. I'm going to weld it right here to get this metal hot so I can pound this down and it won't move. But I'll weld here first, weld all through here. This will be nice and hot, pound this down, then weld it all to this, and then make a plate for inside here. I think that's going to be the pretty much the way to go. I don't know any other way to make it look cooler for the amount of money. Hey, we're recycling all the parts. All right, let me grab the welder. Actually, I'm going to first mount the control, and then I'm going to grab the welder and blast this out. Well, I think it looks pretty tough. Oh, all right, I'm gonna flip the car over. I'm gonna do the other side. We'll just do I'll be a quick thing that I'll show you. You know, I'm doing the same exact thing. So I'm just gonna do like a time lapse. I'm just doing that and just blast that out, even though it's gonna take me 4 days. And then we're gonna end the episode because I wanted to do, you know, the inner fenders and the bottom of the fenders and the rockers and all that stuff, but I think it's getting kind of long. So we'll keep this to part 2. Part 3 will be all the tying up of the ends, like the bottom of the quarters, fitting them and fitting the wheel wells and rockers. Not the front fenders, because I have some surprise for that one. So let me go over and do these, and that way we can end up the episode. That's pretty much it. But, you know, I think that's pretty friggin' cool. So, all right, well, let me flip this thing over, and when we get to the outside. Well, I guess that's another bunch of welding that was done. I'm pretty happy about all this. I mean, redesigning the mounts. What we got here is, I am very confident that the control arms will stay put. That's a big thing. Also, another thing is, you know, this has got to be part 2. Part 3 will be the finishing up of getting this thing off the rotisserie, because right now it's been a couple of weeks of welding. This has taken a long time. You know, especially trying to figure out what to do and where I'm going to weld and what do I need and so forth. And we also have to figure out what forces are being generated on the car. And I'm just trying to make everything squared away. I mean, these plates that I put underneath here were just, all they are is just to keep shit from falling down inside there, dirt and stuff like that. That's the only reason why. I mean, the other place is just, you know, it is what it is. But they're all stiffening plates, pretty much to where I know this is not going to go anywhere if I go into a ditch or something like that and slide in and bang it out. Same thing with the front. The front, I didn't do the external part of the bracing because I don't know what else I'm going to include. Also, this mount right here, I was going to attach it to this, but I'm not sure. I might be putting a exhaust mount on it. I don't really know. So I'm going to hold off on that. It's not that, I mean, this is stiff enough where it does its job no matter what, and putting extra stiffeners here is just for show anyway. But that's pretty much it, you know. Thank you very much for the long, this is, how can I put this? It's kind of, this is the boring, this is not the boring part, but it is kind of the boring part, because you have to sit there and plate and think of survivability and down the road how to fix the car, because there's a lot of things in here that I have in the back of my mind to see to make sure if it's going to work out all right. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But the next one is definitely the last where we're going to be able to put this on the rotisserie. What it is, and we need to do the inner fender wells final. We need to do the rockers final. We can't do the front fenders final because we need to have the drivetrain in it in order to make everything, the hood fit correctly, everything correctly. We already have the corners fitting correctly and the rockers are already set in their positions. So we can make these base or the bottoms all coincide with exactly how it's going to fit and for it to protect the fiberglass. You know, that's also a big thing because that's the expensive part. This stuff is not expensive because you see I'm using just shit metal from everything. You know, some of the metal in here I use, it was from an old trailer frame, you know, or old control arms, and stuff like that. I mean, you can do it. You just find junk that people are throwing away and saying, you know what, I can use it for that and just cut it up and use it. There you go. You don't have to go buy anything. I mean, you have to buy grinding discs and cutting discs, but you'd have to buy that anyway, even if you bought the model, you know. So, on that, I really appreciate you showing up. Thank you very much. You know, hopefully this is something that you guys can make your own Sport Quattros with. Maybe it might give you an idea. Is this the best way of doing it? Don't know. I'm just a hillbilly. I'm nothing special. You know, I'm just throwing a bunch of junk together to see if it sticks. See if it hits the wall and sticks. All right. Well, thank you very much for showing up. I really appreciate it. Hey, have a great day, and don't forget, you can do it. I'm nothing special. You can do it. See you now.